This is serious, dude.
This is serious. All right. We're officially live, Johnny. We're officially live.
We're live. Oh, you know what? Shouldn't we? I was. Can Trey hear me?
Yeah, he can hear you.
So with us live streaming this, I feel like we should, a day out, 2 days out, like always be reminding people on our story, the live show at fucking 11 a.m. Eastern, because right now, like, no one's watching, but like, we got to let them know.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. We in that new, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I agree with that too.
I'll get on it.
Yeah.
100%. And we got YouTube hooked up too, Johnny. So we're good.
Cool. Yeah, whatever. Yep. I'll get on it on.
Cool. Do it for Igor.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Business and Biceps. And you better wake your ass up, because on today's show, we're going to talk about solution-based thinking, something we saw out there in the streets that we both, loved and saw, like businessmen just going to get it at all angles, about to buy fucking private islands, Indian reservations, anything, right? So something that's kind of close to us. John and I both worked in, MMA and UFC, and we love what we saw Dana do. And I think this is a great takeaway for any business person, Johnny.
Yeah, I think just to give people a little bit of background who may not be aware of it, obviously we know professional sports, everything for the most part, is shut down. And the president of the UFC, Dana White, if you're not a fan, he was dead set on making his, I believe it was April 18th event happen. And then consequently, a week after that, having a fight every consecutive week. And he actually made it happen. So that's something when you think about the environment that we're in and how many obstacles there are. Obviously, the biggest one is COVID-19. But beyond that, just public perception and clearing people through health and finding a place to put it on. This guy found a way. And I think we can break it down from every angle today.
Yeah, I think what's so cool is that, all the way, you think about Dana's career, Johnny, all the way from like him taking it, what was UFC, 6 or 8, it was early days, right? Taking it to the Fertittas, saying this is something. How early did he grab a hold of it?
I think it was 2002, and I think it was somewhere in the UFC like 20 range. But he went to his friends that he grew up with, Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, and they acquired the UFC for $2 million. And here $2 million. Okay, $2 million. Here's the crazy part. The crazy part is this, is that The Ultimate Fighter was on Spike TV. It was their first reality show. And Spike TV wouldn't pick it up. So they paid Spike for the time. And they were losing so much money. They were $40 million in the hole that Lorenzo made the call to Dana, who was running the company even at that time in 2005. And he said, get on the phone, sell this thing. We're losing way too much money. Sell this thing. So Dana proactively was making phone calls to sell the UFC when the finale of The Ultimate Fighter took place. And literally this legendary war, and you guys need to look it up, Stephan Bonner versus Forrest Griffin, took place on live TV. I shit you not. I had friends that weren't even into the UFC. This was truly the kind of fight that your phone started ringing. Your phone started ringing like people are like, dude, are you watching this fight? People who didn't even watch fights were like, are you watching this? It was insane. And that moment in time, straight talk, that moment in time literally changed the whole trajectory of the UFC, created a fan base. And that $2 million investment, which they almost sold out, $38 million in the red in 2005 when he told them to sell it, sold for $4.2 billion.
Billion with a B.
And they were that close to selling it at a $38 million loss. That's insane.
And when you think about that too, which is so crazy, you think about like the fact that he was at that point, that red, believe that much. And then you think about something that's coming up like right now, and he's saying, you're telling me I can't have a fight? Like when you go through things of that nature, you start to believe that nothing's really impossible. And that's kind of my point, is like, as these things come your way, you're like, I got a solution. All right, I can't get this way, I'll turn that way. I get this way, I turn that way. And it's like, that's what I loved, we watched Dana do. He's talking about literally buying a private island for international fights. Like, I know that, and he has his own planes to get the fighters there. Like, when I hear the things, it's like billionaire fucking big boy talk, but it was like,
but it's real profitable, but it's
yes,
but
so
it's that big of a business.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? And what I love about, just I guess to give a little more background on Dana is, when we talk about just being aware of culture and being aware of your instincts, the one thing that he talked about early on, obviously me coming from that business, I'm very aware of kind of how it developed, that he always talked about. And it's just a basic principle. He would always say when MMA, when John McCain was calling it cockfight, human cockfighting and all this stuff, he would always say, it's real simple. We just have to figure out a way to package this thing up and put it out so people look at it as a sport, because for one simple reason, you can go in any corner of the globe, and if there's good looking women, if there's a pickup basketball game, if there's food trucks, if there's a carnival and a fight breaks out, everyone's going to stop and watch the fight. Yeah. That's human behavior. That's human. And just that alone,
real talk.
just that alone is how he knew he had something.
Yeah, it's so crazy. What I think too, John, because we've got a lot of new people that have come over to Business and Biceps, a little bit of background of our background with the sport. And I think you should start, John, and just kind of give a little background of you and MMA and fighting in general. And then we want to spin to some like personal stuff, that how our interaction with Dana, and to kind of even lend even more insight.
Yeah. So like, MMA is really interesting. It's a really interesting player in my life because, as everyone knows, I struggled with addiction earlier in the really early 2000s. And the one thing that I started to do that helped me get out of it was train mixed martial arts. And at that time in 2005, I wasn't fully recovered then, but I started to train. You couldn't train MMA anywhere, right? There was like karate dojos and shit. There wasn't MMA gyms, but one of the guys, Keith Hackney, who was in UFC, I think 3 through 6, his nickname is the Giant Killer. He had a school in Roselle, Illinois. It was like 20 minutes from my house. I started training there, and I just got addicted to it. I got fucking addicted to it. I fucking loved it, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do very well if I was feeling like shit. So that was not the motivator, but it was one of the main motivators for me to like kick that fucking addiction. So when I did, the first thing I did is I said, I want to be a part of this business. And I started a mixed martial arts retail shop, and we had some success very early. And I was able to sponsor fighters. And what I mean by that is I was able to put my name on their shorts and their t-shirts and use that as advertising, because they were fighting on Spike TV or pay-per-view. And from that sponsorship money, I built relationships with them. And then I started managing them because they trust me, because I paid them on time. With no legal background or anything, I built up an agency that I sold a part of 3 different times. It was a multi-million-dollar agency. And at one time we had, I think, over 30 guys under contract. And more than anything, we managed a lot of the UFC's corporate marketing budgets from partners like the Muscle Farms of the world, and video game partners and movie partners and all that stuff. So I've been involved in mixed martial arts before anyone knew what mixed martial arts was. So to see it be mainstream now, that was just like a dream back in the day. And everybody, there was like a community that was always trying to educate people, like, oh, there's grappling on the ground. There's a bunch of men just lying on top of each other. I was like, no, bro, you don't understand. Like, that's a skill, what's happening right there. You try to get up when that dude's on top of you and he's got you in this position, or, you know what I'm saying? So I've been involved in it for a long time. I know a lot of the guys in the industry. I know almost every coach. I know almost everyone in the UFC. And I'm just proud to see the sport doing what it's doing.
Yeah. And it's so funny, John, because I was on the flip side of that, right? I didn't follow the sport at all, really. And I didn't know the chess game that was going on the ground because I played basketball. I didn't really understand the wrestling or jiu-jitsu at all. It just wasn't. I knew who the Gracies were from the early UFCs, watching them, but I was a very fringe fan. So as my old business partner says, hey, I think this is going to be our main marketing thing, which is, I think our first fight we sponsored was UFC 96. And that when it did become on Spike TV, every kid in college was watching. And as you know, John, when we started working together, like we could go and get a logo this big on each guy's butt. That would be a 3 round. They didn't have 5 rounds back then. I don't think, did they, John? Only for title fights.
No. Yeah, three rounds.
Rounds.
If you think about it,
15.
60% chance because at that point, I think only 40% of the fights were being finished. So there's a 60% chance you were getting 15 minutes
of TV time.
Prime time TV time. And the logos we were putting on people's butts, they were legitimately 14 to 15 inches wide by about 9 inches high. If that doesn't sound big, trust me, it is.
And bright as a motherfucker. And we had that color so bright, you couldn't miss it. Hey, Johnny, your arms are so big, you keep hitting the table. So be careful on that. Sorry. You can see the cameras going around. But so basically what it was is then I had to, before I started working with John, I was forced to watch the fights because I was the one running all the advertising for the new brand that I was, helping build in the Octagon. So hell, I'm watching fights 2 days a week, every Friday night on Spike, starting to learn. And I'm trying to chase after this guy's Brazilian cousin. And this, I can't remember, it was a cowboy or somebody came out one time. He had a pink logo on instead of a green one. Then we had some guys that were supposed to wear stuff and they'd never come out. And then when I met John, we started working together, and then John's company ran all of that stuff for our brand. But over time, as I got more involved with the sport, I would be around Dana White from time to time, and just the respect on how this dude just was like pedal down, all gas, no brakes constantly. And the first interaction, it wasn't even a personal interaction, but this is how it kind of happened. Early days, you didn't have to pay the UFC. You just paid the fighters, right? Remember when it was like that, John, before they had the tax?
Trust me.
You remember UFC 100. We had 11 fighters, I think. And I remember specifically, we got a call to the office from one of Dana's people that said, like, he walked in after that fight and said, who the fuck is Muscle Farm, and why the fuck aren't they paying us something? Because what are we doing? Why are we allowing these guys all over our platform to not give us a cut? And that's like that old school, like mob mentality business shit. But it's the reality is you got to pay to play at that level. And so that was the first interaction. And I had a few others that were business-like and they were very direct. But that was kind of my first kind of experience with Dana White. And then I have another one I'll explain. But John, what was your first like personal interaction with Dana?
Well, what was interesting is, the entry point for my business, managing companies' money was so much easier. It was a fucking home run when the UFC didn't charge a quote unquote tax, like you're talking about.
True.
Before they charged a tax to companies like Muscle Farm and other companies that wanted to.
Is it because of Condom Depot, John? Is that what fucked it up for everybody?
No. It's because they're shrewd businessmen, and they say, wait. There's a whole economy going on inside of our Octagon, and we're not participating in it. Yep. And that's when we were profiting so hard, because nobody had to pay the UFC anything. So basically, just to give the listener an idea, just to break down the numbers. So basically, let's say a company gave my company $1 million, and it was before the time the UFC wanted to tax companies like Corey just brought up. Well, all that $1 million would go to us, and we would spend a small portion of it to get them the deliverables, aka 20 fighters, 30 fighters, for whatever. Well, then the UFC came in and they said, oh, you want to bring in this company? The tax is going to be $50,000 if they want to sponsor one guy. It's going to be $250,000 if they want to, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. So there was this guy, Mike Mersch, that worked for the UFC. He was the controller. Yeah. And I literally would be like, Mike, what fucking sense does that make, dude? If they want to sponsor one person, they're going to pay you $50,000, and then they're going to pay him like what, fucking 2,000. How do those numbers make sense? Like, if we're going to do this program, there has to be broad guidelines so everybody understands it. But the UFC was like, no, this is my motherfucking game. And basically
they make their own rules.
they would do is they would say, how big is the company? So I would sit on my end and I'd always sandbag. I'd be like, listen, man, it's a startup. Like they ain't gonna do shit. And they'd be like, fine, 75,000. I'm like, bing, write the check for 75,000, whatever that comes out of my cut. But that was how the game was played. And at that time, I got a phone call from Dana because I was going at this guy Mike Mersch, who was right under him, and he was like, what should these companies be paying? You think they should be paying less? Why should they be paying less? And then I tried to explain to him the ratios. When you're paying 250,000, or the UFC is asking you to pay 250,000 to sponsor 5 fighters, those 5 fighters aren't going to see anywhere near, because the rates for fighters back then, like I said, were like 2,000. So if they're getting 10 or 15, how are you going to get 250? We need some sort of equal ratio. And of course, he's smart. So he's like, how the fuck do I know they're getting 2? He's like, I'll never know they're getting 2. He's like, that's prime TV time. And he was right, because the value of that time was so immensely, it was so much bigger.
It was undervalued as shit.
Yeah, it was so much bigger than those prices.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's why I went in that business, because that gap that existed, that was my profit. That was my profit. So my first discussion with him was him saying, how the fuck should we set this up? I'm surprised he even asked me a question. And then, and then from there, he was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, people who run commercials are paying $150,000 for 30 seconds. You're going to tell me a guy is in the cage for 15 fucking minutes and he $2,000? Like, something's not right. And I just said, hey man, that's the market, But yeah, we worked it out.
And I remember having those conversations with investors saying like, you would run a TV commercial when that was still super popular for X, but you could watch Friday night fights on Spike, and every college kid in America was watching that shit, drinking beer, and we'd have these brawls, whether it was in the WEC or the UFC, and guys would have, the logos on both for minutes at a time. You couldn't value. And still to this day, like Johnny and I got Conor McGregor one time for like fucking $1,500 or something, wasn't it, John? And then we got him another time for, I don't know, maybe $3,000, and they're still showing those highlights now.
And that was that was the beauty of the UFC, is that when you're sponsoring guys, you do not know if they're going to become John Jones or Conor McGregor or whatever. But here's what you do know: when they do progress in their career, before they fight, all the content, people need to understand the UFC, honestly, first and foremost, they're a media company. They're a phenomenal media company. And that's why they are where they are. So all that stuff, all that money, let's say that was spent in 2010, right? It's still paying off today, because when that fighter is being introduced or when they're doing a countdown show, there's all these fucking highlights from 2010 on money, you could have spent or my company could have put out. And you're still getting advertising. It's crazy. The residual value, it is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. That's why there's these little pockets, and I want people to understand this in a broader sense. There's these little pockets when a business is young, where there's spots to fucking hit home runs. But whenever you're hitting a home run, no, home runs are not realistic. So if you're hitting a home run, it's not going to last.
It's not for long, right, John?
Yeah, and you just have to know that. So yeah, that was a home run for that period of time.
Yeah, and it was so fun because you knew it was a home run, and just the press around it, because everybody could go and see that your company was doing that or my company was out there. Like it was an unbelievable moment in time for a sports league to be that touchable for a startup brand, all the way down to, then when it got to where it was just, you have to have big money to even play at all, obviously now, but it was awesome. One thing I want to mention too. So real
quick on that, I want to say something real quick in relation to that. The most interesting part of it, and what was phenomenal for small businesses, is small businesses, because the UFC was not mainstream accepted. Guys, it wasn't on ESPN at the time. Small businesses got their opportunity to be on the big stage, because I'll give you an example. I talked to the VP of global marketing. This is just one example. There's many examples. For Domino's Pizza. I also talked to a VP of marketing for Chase Bank. And Chase Bank, for example, they loved it. Want to know why they loved it? Because their logo is an octagon. The UFC is not. They loved that idea. But both of them, after having a meeting with their people, were like, there's no fucking way we're going to have blood on our logos. So what you have to understand is these monster companies wouldn't touch it. So it gave the small businesses a chance to literally get in the big show. You're never going to have that opportunity again. You're never going to have that. It was harder to sell a UFC sponsorship when you had literally the best analytics, the best numbers in the fucking world to these big companies than literally if you would have said, hey, I'm raising $50,000 for as a booster from my high school yearbook. They would write that check faster. They literally would.
I remember.
They were afraid of the perceived risk. And boy, did they miss out in retrospect.
Yeah, if you think about, John, being involved it's like being involved in the NFL in the early days, or being involved. Like, we were literally involved in responsible for a lot of what people saw from an advertising standpoint, and you managing athletes and like of a sport in a huge growth phase. What you know what? We don't even really talk about this stuff very often because the way we operate in business, we just keep moving on. But if you really reflect a little bit, it's pretty crazy. If you think this would be like NFL, like 1972 or something, you know what I'm saying? Like,
there's so much ignorance out there. And I'll tell you this. So, like I've said on the show before, I had the first MMA show on ESPN. And the reason I left it is because a new program director, listen how crazy this is. A new program director came in. And the premise of the show was going to be call-ins on fight nights. Like, everyone wants to talk about the fights, who's going to win and why, and then a post-fight, everyone wants to talk about why this guy won. And right before we went on, he's like, no call-ins. I was like, what the fuck you mean no call-ins? Like, that's the premise of the show. He says, we've done our research. This is a guy at the top of ESPN. We've done our research. And we believe that the people watching the UFC fights primarily are inmates or ex-inmates. I swear to God. I said, oh, really? Are they? I seriously, because I didn't give a fuck. I said, are they gonna call from prison? I said they're inmate. And
he said it with a straight fucking face.
With a straight face, he shut down our call-ins, which is the premise of a fight night show. And he's just, I'm like, they're Bears fans because this was in Chicago. They're Cubs fans. They're Blackhawks. No. Our research shows that these are felons. They're inmates. I'm like, bro,
get the fuck out of here, bro.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what you face when you're on the front side.
Yeah, the front
of
side.
Something.
Makes sense. I know. So one of my best interactions though with Dana was, when Rampage Rashad, for you guys that follow the sport, Rampage Rashad after the Ultimate Fighter was a huge buildup. I mean, massive buildup. And I was at the fight. John, I don't know if you remember. That's where Mike Russo. Remember Mike Russo?
Chicago cop. He's
I know,
Chicago
exactly.
cop.
So, hey, I'll tell you. So I gotta add this story. So John and I go and get like 8 people for the fucking card. We're stacked. We got people all over it. And all of a sudden, Mr. Mike Russo walks out and he's fighting. Who's the big jack dude?
Todd Duffy.
He's fighting Todd Duffy. Joe Rogan says on the actual mic, this looks like a before and after. So I'm sponsoring a guy that looks like the before. And I'm talking like a bad before, right, Johnny? Like,
he liked his donuts, bro.
Oh, he's bad. So, but we got him real cheap, right? So he walked, and at that point, I was just looking at stuff. I didn't know who he was, so I approved it. Yeah, let's get him. So I swear to you, all my partners, and there's a bunch of people there, and Mike Russo walks out, and it looks even worse because Todd Duffy's so fucking jacked. So I swear to you, Johnny, I'm like sinking in my chair.
Yeah,
because I see my partner go like, "Gee, you approved this? Like, this motherfucker is terrible looking." Like, and then all of a sudden, I swear to you,
I know.
Yeah, you know where I'm going. All of a sudden, he must have closed his eyes and swung as hard as he could, and he knocked Todd Duffy stiff as a fucking board, and he just went zoom. And then all of a sudden, we were like 8 for 8. I looked like a fucking hero.
Yeah.
And dude, it was like everywhere because it was like the biggest, like what, oxymoron of all time of this before picture knocks out a 6'3", like 230 jacked. It was huge. Yeah. Oh, I was so excited. But anyway, so right after that, Dana had set it up for all partners. He said, we're taking you guys on a 3-day excursion. And I was like, all right, this is fucking sweet, right? So no lie, after this fight, Rampage Rashad, they take us down to Cabo, and you get to Cabo. I mean, we were in Vegas, and after the fight, we got on a plane. They chartered some type of plane with like 80 people on it. So it wasn't like a private jet, but it was like a fucking jetliner. I guess it would be private, whatever. It didn't feel that private. You go down there and you wake up, and I had no clue where I was at because they just whisked us away. And so I wake up and this place is fucking beautiful. And they say, hey, well, and probably for tax purposes, we got to have meetings with the partners. So this is what's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The partner meeting, John, this is Dana White, Lorenzo and Frank, a fucking like a pull down projector like thing at this hotel. And there's like 8 people in the room. It's like us, the old BSN guys. It's Tap Out, Dan and Punk Ass. It's a couple other sponsors. So it's like literally like 15 people, and they have the octagon on the screen, and then they have the world right beside it. And they said, look, we are going to be the biggest worldwide sport, blah, 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 blah. And we're sitting there listening. He goes, I'm going to tell you guys something you shouldn't fucking forget. Just follow us with your business around the world. Every market we go to will help you, or you should find distributors. Colombia, fucking Brazil. We will be, if you are dedicating this money to us, just fucking follow us. And then, 15 minutes into the meeting, Uriah Faber walks in with his shirt off and he goes, oh, what's going on here? And then Dana's like, it's not a fucking bodybuilding show. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, messing with him. And he dips out. I mean, it's like so like low key. But when he said that, I could see it in his eye, his vision in just the brain of just like saying, I'm going to fucking dominate the world with this sport. And if you are down with us, like you've been, just fucking follow. And that's exactly what we did. And we sold in all those fucking markets, bro. And I was there in a room with fucking like 12 people getting that direct. Man, what? It was impressive to see, bro. And watch and still watch.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they knew it. They knew it, and you just have to understand that these guys they're not just fight promoters. And one thing, and I know we're going UFC heavy here, that you have to respect about them is their understanding of combat sports history. And I'm not going to go too deep in the weeds, but I'm going to give you a little lesson here. So boxing used to be something, if you talk to your father, or anyone talks to their grandparents, it was magnificent. There was Friday night fights. There was all this stuff. Boxing has killed boxing because of multiple promoters. And when promoters have interest, aka ownership in fighters, what boxing does and did is they'll put the best fighter against someone that should not be even near the ring, so their fighter can continue to be undefeated and can smoke people. Well, what kind of product is boxing putting out if it's all divided into all these different promoters, all these different promotions, and each one only has a couple interests, aka their best fighters? You're just going to see really talented fighters that should be fighting each other.
Yeah,
that are fighting tomato cans
all over the place.
And that is what took us from George Foreman, Ken Norton, Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, to where we are today, with boxing. And the UFC knew, because they were true fight fans, boxing made this mistake. What we're going to do is we are going to build the best fighters in the world, and they're actually going to fight each other. So the one is going to fight the fucking two.
Make the fight.
Who wins? The fans fucking win. So they understood that they could not just, promote, let's say, a John Jones or a Ronda Rousey and put them against tomato cans to give them highlight reels, which is the boxing playbook. They knew they could not maintain and build a fan base that way because the product is subpar. So that's one big lesson they learned. Another thing is, like he told you, as they went global, part of that strategy was, okay, we're not going to go into Germany yet. Even though the demand is there, they're watching, we're not going to go into Germany until we have 4 German fighters that we think are good and one that we think could be a star. Because once you go into these markets and you build a star, that market is a UFC market. And that's how they've built their global footprint. They're continuing to do it. But right now, what you got to understand about their business, man, there's no off season. There's not. That means the register's ringing every day. They have over 120 TV deals. Yeah. Okay, they have TV deals in Africa. They have so many content deals that if they made no money on pay-per-view, it wouldn't fucking matter. If they made no money on tickets, it wouldn't fucking matter. They are, and then think about all the licensing, and then think about all the. It's not. They have built something so special. William Morris Endeavor, the biggest talent agency in the world, bought them for $4.2 billion. I don't know. That was what, 2-3 years ago, whatever it was. Last year, I heard that it is the valuation is over $7 billion.
You think that mostly because of the ESPN Plus deal, right, Johnny? Don't you think that's the major one there, or is it just the international?
So it's like, okay, so we have, if you guys follow UFC, we have Kamaru Usman, champion at welterweight, and we have Israel Adesanya, the last style bender. He's like the next like crazy ass
John Jones, Anderson Silva type.
Yeah, and these guys come from I believe it's Nigeria, and they're opening up. Not only are they opening up the market in Africa, but what starts happening is this. All these guys who were just kicking the soccer ball around as kids, they start training MMA.
Talent.
So what does that mean?
Whole new crop of talent, bro.
Just like we saw with the Russians, the whole Habib movement. Do you know how many fucking machines come out of fucking Dagestan and Russia? It's this, they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. And that's why the UFC is, you could argue in terms of growth potential, it's the most valuable from a growth standpoint sport in the world. Of course, it's not more valuable than the NFL, but from a growth standpoint, I don't think anything is growing. Honestly, the only thing you could probably compare to it, it's funny to say this, is esports.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. It is. And that's why I think this just storyline, John, is important for people to.
But let's talk about what he's doing right now, or what he did.
So what he did right now, which was there's no wall. You climb under it, you go over it, you dig through it, you run through it. Like the fact of that I got inspired by it, bro. Just having some interaction obviously makes it a little different. I pay more attention to him, but like I was super inspired. Like this motherfucker ain't giving up, obviously. And you expect him to just go, hey, like everyone else. And he's like trying to do the Indian reservation. The private island thing to me would have been and do the fajitas got. I mean, that would have been.
He's doing it though.
Is he going to do it? Is he going through with it still?
Yeah. So the private island thing he's doing. He had to cancel these shows, but he's sticking with the private island thing because I think that in and out, anyone who's seen anyone who's a Bruce Lee fan knows the movie Enter the Dragon. All the the baddest dudes in the world go to this private island and they fucking fight. And I think So I think he's taken some inspiration, which is brilliant from there. But
think about the marketing around that too, John, because everybody's gonna be like, damn, these motherfuckers, like right now, they're gonna get all the shine. He has to make this happen. Like that's the way you gain on the other sports leagues.
And to show you the power of their media and their value in media, they don't need fans in seats.
No.
That's why he's doing this private island thing. They're making money coming from every direction, right? Licensing deals, TVs, all this stuff. They don't need fans to be in seats. And I'll tell you this: they did a fight in, I think it was Brasilia, Brazil, right when this COVID thing started going, that they didn't cancel. And who was it? Kevin Lee versus somebody. Either way, they didn't have any fans there. And I will tell you this, for anyone who's watched MMA for a long time, when Pride was number one back in like 05, 04, 03, there would be 60,000 Japanese people in Saitama Super Arena. But the way the Japanese people would respect the fights is they wouldn't make any noise during the fight. So you would hear the boom, you would hear the kicks, you would hear everything. And what's really cool about watching a fight with no fans is you hear that. You hear the shots. You hear what they're saying to each other sometimes. You hear all the corner stuff. So the idea of presenting a fight with no fans to a admitted hardcore fan, it's more appealing because you're more in the fight.
Yeah. So did he close down everything short term to get all this infrastructure in, Johnny? Because I think that's what I saw in the news, right? Where there isn't any fights going on right this second, but then he's going to come back and then put him on the island. Is that the plan? Is that what you saw?
So what he had set up was, and you guys, you want to talk about making it happen. So he knew no state athletic commission would sanction this. So what did he do? He went to Lenmore, California. I believe it's Tachi Palace, which is owned by Native Americans who do not operate under California state law. And he got them to agree to host a fight. So he is operating under in their sovereign territory. And they said, yes, you can do a fight here. We have our own commissions. We have everything. So the UFC 249 was set to be April 18th in Lenmore, California. But because ESPN is the pay-per-view provider through its streaming service, ESPN Plus, he got a call yesterday from the CEO of ESPN Disney, and he said, no. So Dana did it. Dana did it. He made it happen. ESPN said no, and because they have a $1 billion partnership with ESPN, obviously he respected ESPN's call, but he made it happen. And I want to note one other thing. He got on a call with President Trump literally to tell him about that's how proactive he was. He talked to the goddamn president to say, listen, I'm not letting this stop it. And he made a great point. And I've seen this firsthand managing fighters. The UFC takes health and safety so seriously. When they didn't have to take health and safety seriously, they always test before, after. They do amazing things for these fighters. And back in 2013, they brought NFL, MLB, NBA. None of them had USADA testing for performance enhancing drugs. Again, they're ahead of the curve. Dana said, I don't even want to go down what Major League Baseball went down. So we're going to bring in the same body, USADA, that tests for the Olympics to test our fighters. And I could tell you from managing them that USADA can show up if you have a fight, or even if you're under contract, they can show up at your house at 4 a.m.
anytime,
knock on the door, and either take your blood or piss. So they are so good with taking care of their health of their fighters and keeping the integrity of the sport that I believe they were ready to put on a fight, even if it was during this COVID incident.
Yeah, so good. I don't know, just it's super motivating. And I thought with our backgrounds, it'd be good to kind of weigh in on that and tell some stories and give some people some background on how we were part of that entire, a lot of that growth process, because, look, we both paid a lot of fighters, Johnny, for a lot of years. There was young fighters that could count on, our marketing dollars and your management. And we helped a lot of these guys way before the salaries were as big as they are now. And still some, the early guys, still the salaries aren't that big. And so we contributed a lot to the sport, maybe more than we've ever really led on to,
Oh no, listen, there was a huge contribution because I could tell you as being in the books of the fighters and what they earned, there was, a 3 to 4 year period where um guys that I was managing, they were making more money through sponsorships than they were through fighting. And that I take pride in, and of course your old company participated in that. But that, yeah, 100%. That literally allowed some of those guys to quit their jobs. We have to remember, as recent as like 2015, Stipe Miocic, who was the UFC heavyweight champion, the dude still had a job as a firefighter. Now, he didn't have to because, he was getting paid at least $500,000 a fight. But there was a time where, the main event dudes were, making $100,000, which is whatever. It's actually not good money for a main event, but yeah.
No, but by the time you pay your coaches, pay your taxes, and try not to get your ass kicked, and you fight what, maybe twice a year, then you might be making $100,000 for the year.
And how about this? Could you imagine being in a sport that has a higher probability of injury? And I don't mean injury on fight night, because you're getting paid on fight night. Yep. But you know how many fighters have to drop out of fights because they've been training for 9 weeks and they have to pay coaches and everyone, and then they fucking break their ankle or they get their jaw and they can't fight.
Happens all the time.
Dude, some of these guys don't get to fight for 18 months. Yeah. Dude, someone's got to pay. So it's an unforgiving sport. It always will be. It's fighting.
It's pretty cool. Johnny, anything else based around UFC or MMA business wise that you could give the listeners, lessons or anything else that just kind of in that kind of realm before we wrap it up?
I just think if we're talking about UFC, Dana White, I think we have to talk about the whole premise of not caring what anyone else thinks. And listen, love him, hate him. A lot of people hate Dana White. A lot of people hate Dana White. But here's what you cannot take away from him. He literally is, I don't want to say single-handedly, but predominantly responsible for creating a sport, a mainstream sport. So say what you want about him.
He was a boxing aerobic instructor too, right, Johnny? Like that's what he did. He was a personal trainer, guys, basically.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Correct. And say what you want about him. Say he should pay the fighters more. Say this, say that. Listen, I've seen them do some things to fighters that I don't agree with. I've seen them take care of fighters way more than I ever expect. There's good and there's bad in everything. But what he and the Fertittas have done to create a multi-billion-dollar industry that is global is something you don't have to like, but you have to respect it. You have to respect it. And this is coming from a guy that last time I saw him, he said, the first thing he said to me was, "What's wrong with you, fuckhead?"
Yeah.
So
it's pretty good. That's real good, Johnny.
Yeah.
All right. So I had a couple randomness. And I think that we've got, now that we got a live audience.
Now we got live audio. We can fucking freestyle.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got random questions.
Do whatever.
Here. I got, John's got his heater. I got random questions. Are you ready, John?
I was born ready. Everyone knows this.
All right. Give me a bucket list item that John Fosco has already done and one that you still would like to do.
Bucket list item I already did was go to the island of New Zealand. I was always fascinated with the two islands with New Zealand as a child severely, and literally that fascination was worth it. Anyone who has a chance to go to New Zealand, fucking go there. It is, here's what I'll say about it in short. You will never see so many geographic changes in such a short, let's say, span of mileage, going from fucking snow-covered 13,000-foot peaks, driving 50 miles and having, a fucking desert. Okay. It's insane. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. And it really opened my mind up. So that's
what was that town you really loved, John? Queen.
Best. I believe the best town, best. Yeah, it's more like a town. It is a city. Queenstown. It's on the South Island. It's perfect. It reminds me a little bit of Aspen. Obviously, as Aspen doesn't have the ocean, but the people in New Zealand are very quirky. They have a very interesting personality, but they're funny and they're dry, sarcastic. It's just like a place you can't imagine. And flying in there looks like you're flying into some planet on Star Wars. So
That's awesome.
it's something you need to experience it. So what was the other half of the question?
One you haven't done yet, but will.
One I haven't done yet that I will. Bucket list. I think I will put together some sort of program at some point to like help people who went through what I did. I don't know what it looks like.
But you have to do that.
100%, because they're the things that you just learn, right? I learned that I have the ability to speak and people will listen, right? Not everybody has that, and I'm not bragging. It's just I have that, and I also feel like I can articulate things. So when you work for money all the time, there's part of you that really wants to do something for just the greater good, and for me that's it.
That's pretty cool, Johnny.
Yeah.
Bucket list item that I've already done, which was really important that I wanted to make sure, was play at the Home of Golf, play at St. Andrews. Like just going the experience of going to Scotland. And I know I don't talk about golf a lot, but I have a passion for it. I love to play it. And even though I'm mostly a weightlifter, but it's something that I played as a youngster too. And I'm not amazing at it, but I just enjoy beautiful, being outside. It's just, there's something about you can do with your friends, but walking up to St. Andrews from seeing, Tiger play there and win the British and all these type of things, and know that fucking Kings played golf there.
Yes, I did.
And not John the King, but like King George, whatever the fuck his name was, from like 800 something. He played golf there. And so, I when I went there, when you're a single player, you don't have a group or set up, and it's open to the public, but the waiting list is crazy. So you have to wait in line. And so the experience of going there at 9:30 at night, the night before, to get in line, I was number 7 in line, slept on the fucking concrete by the time, and the tea starter comes out at 6 a.m. By 6 a.m., there's 70 people in line. There was dudes that came at 3 a.m. that were in the 40s, and they knew they were fucked and they weren't getting on, right? And they were pissed. Yeah. They're rolling up with their bag at 3 a.m. And I'm like, dude, I've been here since 9:30 yesterday. Like, get your ass to the back of the line. But when he came out and he said, I have 7 guaranteed spots. And I was fucking.
Oh, you got the last one?
I was number fucking 7, Johnny. You believe that?
Yeah.
And I got to choose then when I went off, because some other guys picked the other times. I didn't go off till 4 p.m. But walking that course, I had a putt on 18 to make 89, which I missed it, so I shot 90. But having a caddy that was been there for 25 years and just walking over the bridge was something. I have to do it again. I would like to, but it was unbelievable. And then. One thing I haven't got to do is I have to see the pyramids, bro, before I die. I just have to. I don't know when it's going to be safe to go there or how. I have to see the fucking pyramids. And I know they're not all together. I know it's kind of a spread out deal but there's something about those, because I used to think I wanted to be an archaeologist, I think, but I have to fucking go to Egypt. Yeah. I just do, bro. Do you feel that one too, Johnny?
So here's what's interesting about what you said connected to. So when I went to New Zealand, I actually had to get a refund, because if anyone's seen those Viking River cruises,
which look awesome,
they just put together one for Egypt where you run down the fucking Nile, dude. And I fucking went all in, and it cost a lot of money. But my ex-girlfriend's dad was like, no. And even though there was going to be armed, I think there was like 60 armed guards on the boat, and he's like, no, she ain't going to fucking Egypt. but I was about to spend 17 days on the Nile, and I agree with you 100%. Egypt is a place that I must visit, because it's like to me it's mystical, it's fascinating.
It is. I agree. All right. Best concert ever, Fosco. You've been to a million concerts, literally.
Oh,
what is
so
the
unfair.
best concert John Fosco has ever retro looking back been to that you were like, whoa, fuck. Like that was it. That was it.
Man, that's a unfair question, but I will answer. So yeah, two very specific incidents in it. So Gangstar, rest in peace, aka Guru. He opened up for Rage Against the Machine on their Battle of Los Angeles tour in 1999 when they put out the album. I went to that show, and it was Thanksgiving weekend, and Zach, the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine, came out like right when Gangstar was still on, and just grabbed a motherfucking mic and started saying, like, basically like, listen, you can't trust your fucking history books. Christopher Columbus was a fucking rapist, murdering fucking savage. They can't call Thanksgiving Thanksgiving. They got to call it thanks taking, what they did to people. Like, he just went on this fucking rant, and whether I agree with it, it was like, it sucked me in. I was like, this dude is spitting fire. And the whole place was just, it was like everyone was in awe. And then the last song that Rage played, Killing in the Name of, aka Fuck You, I Won't Do What You Tell Me.
Yeah.
In the middle of the fucking song, dead in the middle, boom, stop the music. Zach stopped the music. He pointed at this guy. He said, basically the guy was like touching a woman. He's like, get your fucking hands off that woman. And he jumped in the crowd to try to fucking literally beat the fuck out of the guy. And then the security guards pulled him off, and he just started screaming at the crowd, no one touches a woman at a Rage Against the Machine show. If they do, I'll fucking kill you. Da, da, da. And then they went back to playing Killing in the Name of.
So it was really
amazing.
It was really the outside passion that everyone could feel.
It's like, it's like Rage Against the Machine ain't an act, dude. It's real. Like those two incidents was like, damn.
So cool. One of my favorite, I've got a couple, but I would say the most one was when I went and saw Jay-Z in this Blueprint 1 tour. It was small venues only. And we have a place at the Ohio State campus called the Newport. And it's super small. I don't even know if it fits. I don't even know what the capacity is. Maybe 1,000, 2,000 max. It's not very big. It's more like a bar club. And Jay-Z was playing. I mean, Jay-Z had like 8 hits already. And I'm going to this thing, and I'm dancing on the dance floor because you could move around, and I'm realizing he's just hitting, H to the Izzo, like hit after hit after hit. And you're just like, this is the craziest shit. Because I saw him then a year later in the Schottenstein Center with DMX, and it wasn't even near the same fucking feel, because you felt like he was literally like 5 feet away from me. It was unbelievable. Before that, though, I think the most impactful, though, was I had this girl I went to high school with that her dad drove tour bus randomly for rappers, Bone Thugs and Harmony and some other ones, and we would get tickets every now and again. So I sat second row for Bone Thugs when I was like a sophomore in high school, and really got a good vibe for them. But then when I got tickets to what was the biggest hip hop tour that Bad Boy had ever put on, and this was early, I saw Biggie Smalls when I was like 60. I think I just got my license. I drove to Pittsburgh. I sat second row. I saw Notorious Big, Craig Mack, Loonies, Naughty by Nature, Mary J. Blige. Who else? Junior Mafia. Little Kim was still with Junior Mafia. Like, it was Puffy wasn't even Puffy yet. Puffy was in the back, like, you know what I'm saying?
Doing his weird dance. He dances like a white guy.
It was so bad. But I remember just being that close to Biggie and his confidence and his swag and just what that whole movement of that late 90s hip hop and him and Pac being in the lead, man, it did something for me from a standpoint of like, okay, these guys, they just, not only do they believe in themselves, like they came from fucking nothing. And that did a lot for me. Both of those two concerts did a lot for me. All right, next. Oh, business that you have been interested in but never got involved in, Johnny? Like something you've always been, kind of fond of or looked at, but you've never actually embarked on.
People are gonna laugh. People are gonna laugh at.
Is it Paranormal Connections?
No. People are gonna laugh at this, but this is. I think if anyone knows anything about us or this, we're not. I'm not into the big sexy things. I'm into things that make money. This is funny, but I will have a self-serve car wash. I am obsessed. I am obsessed with having a self-serve car wash because essentially, sure, you need to procure either the land and the equipment and keep it up to date, but you essentially have no labor.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Print
Sure,
money, bro.
Yeah, so you got to pay it off. You got to pay it off, but car washes, as long as you keep your machinery, like when are people going to stop getting their car washed? You know what I'm saying? Someone could say right now during a pandemic, sure, yeah, right now during the pandemic, but I really want to, as an investment, own a self-serve car wash. It's kind of funny, but yeah.
No, there's a group out here, Johnny, that they're printing money in those, and they give the vacuum service for free. So you can just get the vacuum service anytime you want, and then the car wash is like $5 or $10. Like it's like a flat rate. And dude, as soon as the sun pops out in Ohio, bro, it's like they're literally a cash register. Yeah. So you're gonna laugh at mine then probably because it's similar. I think it'd be amazing to own one of those fucking little dairy huts. I'll tell you why, like the soft serve ice cream, because dude, those things, one, if you're close to a baseball field, they're fucking packed. And there's no way, I don't know how much the markup is, but they dump that fucking milk looking shit in that machine and it kicks out ice cream. There's the margin on that has to be absurd. It's basically like frozen milk and you're hitting people for $2-3 a cone. There's something about every time, and this has been like, I don't know if I had like a good experience at one when I was young or something, but I see them placed in all these little towns and they're fucking packed. And all I can ever think is either some mob dude there washing money or it's like, you know what I mean? They just look like they're seasonal, but they're always busy. So I don't know if I'll ever own one, but I've always like, every time I drive by one, I think, gosh, like that would be interesting. Those are funny. I don't think anybody would have guessed either of those answers. All right. Last question. What sport did you think you were going to go pro in? Because everybody thought at one point they were going to be a professional athlete, I would say.
I honestly, so I'm having a little, there we go. I honestly, when I was younger, like 6th grade, I was absolutely obsessed with basketball, like absolutely obsessed with basketball. And then I realized as I started developing that my body was better suited for football, but I kept playing basketball. But literally when I was in 6th grade, I thought that, basketball is what I love, but I've explained on this show many times that I loved football too, but because my dad loved the fact that I was good at football, I quit playing football like a little stupid fucking idiot to get back at my dad. And that's one thing I do regret. But yeah, it was basketball. So
in the Ohio Valley, there's some like older athletes from a baseball standpoint, and there's always these like, baseball's what's interesting about baseball. There is those stories of a guy that kind of played but was good and then threw 92 and someone signs him into an A-ball contract. Like back in the day in my old kind of country area, like you would hear of some guy's uncle that, got a tryout with the Pirates. And they used to do that shit like in the 50s and 60s.
Dude, one of my good friends from high school did. He was clocked at 94 from shortstop. He got drafted in the 3rd round.
See, there you go. Exactly. Yeah. So I just remember growing up, and the Negro brothers are from that area and some other baseball players that, and I remember thinking like, man, if I could like do something like that. And then it evolved eventually to when Jordan started balling out. I thought I was going to play basketball. And then about my junior year, I realized, well, I'm not getting any scholarship offers and I'm averaging about 4.3 points a game. And I'm pretty sure my jumper is fucking broken. So now I should probably put all of those hours into basketball, into lifting, which is something I have a true passion for.
It's so funny that really fucked up my game is when I was a freshman, I was a $155. When I was a sophomore, I was a $187. And the growth in my back and my arms literally fucked my jump shot.
I'm sure.
No, straight up. Like I was way more dangerous at 155 than I was at 186. So I had to change the way I played the game.
Yeah.
And lifting weights was actually the worst thing I could have ever. It was like bodybuilding, lifting. That's kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was the worst thing I could have ever done for basketball. The worst.
Well, yeah. And back then there was no one was they train like bodybuilders or powerlifters, and then you would attempt to still shoot hoops. It's not like they're doing specific stuff around that type of stuff. Now we didn't know that back then.
Oh, dude, Corliss Williamson was my guy, and he said he used to do curls before every game. And then I started doing that, and I couldn't hit a jump shot because my arms were blown out.
Corliss Williams. That's bringing it back, Johnny. That's bringing it back.
Yeah.
Well, that was the last random questions I had. You got any random questions, Johnny? Anything off the top?
Not questions. I just think, going into Easter and all this stuff, we're in. I just want to touch on the markets with people because I think we're just in such a fascinating time.
Let's do it.
I think that there is a rapid reflex that's going the other way. So what we saw, and none of this is fact, it's all my opinion. Don't listen to me. But what we saw is rapid selling because of what the fuck is going on. And then we saw a little bit of a flattening of the curve in New York. So the stock market just fucking jumped, and it's been jumping. And I just would caution people, because we don't know when we can turn the economy back on. When it gets turned back on, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to get back to where it was. And you have to understand that what we're expecting from an April jobs report is 20% unemployment. The Great Depression was 25%. So this rapid reflex that we saw in the market, I to be honest, like I've done a little bit of selling into strength, because I don't think that this can be maintained. I think it's too much too fast.
It almost seems like the Dow shouldn't be almost 24 again, right, John? I mean,
dude, the country shut down. What sense does that make?
Well, and here I'll tell you, because I'm always like bullish on oil because I like the oil stuff, and I'm looking at like because you bought Oxy and it's up quite a bit since you grabbed it. I saw it yesterday, and I didn't buy that stock, but the ones like that I've grabbed, Marathon was like $17 when I grabbed it. It was like $25, $26 yesterday, and Exxon's up, and I'm thinking oil's like under $30 a barrel. How are these, just because they're saying they're cutting costs, like how the fuck are they? So I agree. It feels a little off, and I haven't
be careful.
I haven't been buying a lot of stuff either. I bought a few little things here that I still thought were high value, but I agree. It seems like it went a little too fast for what we're really up against. Look, I want it to go back to 29,000, right? That's what it didn't hit 30. It hit what, 29 something, John? Was at the height?
Yeah. It was at almost 30.
Almost 30. Like I want it to go back. It's better for everybody if it goes back.
But it's fake news. But it's fake news if it goes back, because we're about to see the largest unemployment number we've seen since the Great Depression. And if that isn't here, people got to understand that when you have a unemployment number like 20%, people prioritize what they spend by food, shelter, gas, bills. No one's got money left over for the other stuff. And a lot of these fucking stocks, you just have to. A lot of young people have not seen a recession or experienced it.
Yeah,
it's a whole different mentality. It's not like, oh, the market. No. Consumer behavior dictates earnings. Earnings dictate stock price. outside of speculation, right? So this isn't just going to be green back up to 29,500 in my opinion. I could be fucking wrong, but somebody needs to explain to me how we could have 20% of people out of jobs and we could see the stock market move. And one more thing is that I think for younger people who are in the market, this is so abnormal. I've never seen a market that could fluctuate 7% in a day. Like the Dow does not, like this is not normal, guys. If the Dow's up 1%, that's a big day.
Yeah,
that's a big,
used to be.
If your stock, if one of your positions is up 2%, that's a big day. This we're in this whole weird fucking area. And I'll tell you what, man. I was talking to Paul. We have another podcast coming out that's not out yet. It's going to be called Inbounds. But what we're talking about is we're talking about $4.5 trillion from the government being inserted into business. $4.5 trillion. Okay. We're getting to a point where that's monopoly money. Like if you don't think there's a cost to that no one can foresee, that's going to trigger some sort of financial recession or whatever, we can't just throw, dude, when Obama spent $700,000 to keep GM afloat, okay, and to prop up the big banks, he was the biggest socialist this country's ever fucking seen. But it worked out, right? It worked out. We got all of our money back. Trump just fucking authorized $4.5 trillion fucking dollars. Okay. Yeah. So we're going into a place economically that I do not want anyone to feel, and I don't want to say that, I'm just gonna say, I don't want anyone to feel comfortable. I don't, because when you get comfortable, you start thinking the norm is there and your money's not fucking safe. Your money is not fucking safe. That's why I talk about selling into strength, because, okay, if there's all this volatility, I'm going to play the market. Dude, like you said, you brought up Oxy. Yeah. Oxy went up fucking 60%. Yeah. I'm out.
Yeah, I wondered if you got out, Johnny, because you grabbed it like around $8, didn't you?
No, it was closer to 10. Yeah. But either way, this is not normal.
Yeah. Well, and they're fluctuating like day trader level like a lot. I mean,
think how much money like the street is making when dude, you don't airline stocks for like 3 days straight, they're up 20%.
I know
that for all you young dudes, that is not how it's supposed to be. They're so if you bought in, like, like some people did,
dude, the opportunity for the young investor or any investor is amazing.
Take the money out. Yeah. Unless you believe that this market is going to stay and move up. I don't believe that, but who am I?
Yeah, so I believe this fast is a little off. I do agree with you on that. And I do think it'll return to where we had it, but it's going to take way longer than a couple months. So mine's more of a longer, like couple year. I just think about what happened after 2008. It took years, bro. It's just going to take time. And I just, the stuff right now seems a little bit faster to me. That's why I wasn't hurry up and buying into stuff, like, because I still think there's going to be more opportunities actually just in a few months. Don't you think, John?
Oh, dude, listen, I think when, this country is, we've become a very reactionary country. So we're not at 20% unemployment until we're at 20% unemployment. Everyone knows it's coming. We see the weekly report of jobless claims. This past week, we had 2 weeks in a row that had over 6.5 million jobless claims. And here's what they said. They said the unemployment offices couldn't even handle the amount. So that means there's more than 6.5. That's 13 million jobs in 2 weeks gone. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about us seeing across the news screen, at the beginning of May for the April jobs report, 20% of this country is out of work. And that is very close to the Great Depression. How do you think the markets are going to react? If they go up, this is it's just insanity. It's insanity. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
it would feel like it's really not backed by anything if that would be happening, basically, because that's just like fundamentals.
Correct. And another thing we need to bring up to let everyone know, and it's been reported out there, is people are hearing that these loans, the CARES Act, 2.1 trillion, and this other 2.3 trillion they put through yesterday, is being dispersed to small businesses. Well, it's supposed to be, but what's happening is there's a breakdown between government and banks. And banks like Wells Fargo, like Chase, they're not comfortable putting their money out. The government's telling them, loan the money out. It's backed by the Treasury. They're saying, hey, man.
Not working that way.
It's not going to happen that way. So everyone who's hearing that small businesses are getting these loans to cover pay, no one has gotten a fucking dollar yet, and no one is getting any answers. So let me tell you this. Every day for a small business during this is like a week, meaning your next rent payment, if you default on it, is going to trigger a domino effect. And it's not because of you. It's because you are like many other small businesses that do not have cash reserves or this or that. If we start defaulting all across the country on rent payments to these real estate investment trusts or to private fucking landlords, we are going to trigger the biggest commercial real estate fucking breakdown anyone's ever seen. So the speed that this money gets delivered to small businesses is everything. And I want everyone to know that the small businesses have gotten nothing yet. Yeah. They've got nothing. And it's in everyone's interest that they get something. So this is serious stuff. And people need to be aware of it, because even if you say, well, I don't own a small business. Well, if the real estate market collapses,
it affects everybody.
And you own some real estate, this shit affects everybody.
Or if your 401's wrapped up in the market, I mean, it all affects everybody. That's why we all have to work off of each other, and hopefully that they can get that figured out to where, the small business can get their money so they can pay their leases and pay their payroll and retain all their employees, which is, what we're doing. I mean, that is the move. If we can, make it through the few months that they're saying that it's going to be. I mean, it's tricky, bro.
We're going to make it. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about us. I just want people to understand what things that they don't view as that has to do with me, that it has to do with them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that can even mean that a street you live on that's where you like to go, like downtown Granville, that has the pubs and this and that. If this continues, that area is going to be vacant. When an area becomes vacant, okay, property goes down. Property goes down, crime comes in. Yeah. So people need to understand this whole fucking dynamic. This is fucked. And let me just say one more thing. Why should we have fucking banks lending businesses money when we could do, I'm sorry, what Italy did and say, hey, this is
freeze, bro.
Insane. Yeah. Freeze mortgages, freeze rents. No one loses money then. You just
pause everything.
Exactly. Then no one's waiting on checks. No one's waiting on anything. And you are held to your debt just like everyone is. But there's a pause.
It's the smartest way, dude, to do it, I think. 100%. When I heard him say they did that, I was like, because that just freezes everything in time. Because when no one loses money, when no one has to pay their biggest bill, which is their shelter or their business shelter, like when no one has to pay that, it takes a ton of fucking pressure off so many people. Like that would be, if they could get everybody on board for that, but I just don't know that our country will do that, Johnny. But
the problem is because,
and we're capitalists, we want to get paid, bro. Like, I mean, but that's the way to do
it. During a pandemic,
right,
we're socialists now because you're a socialist if you put $4.2 trillion to save business. Business, technically, if you're a capitalist, shouldn't be saved. It should have to deal with the conditions it's in. So now that we're in socialism world, aka 4.2 trillion going here and there and everywhere, I have free money here, free money there. Well, okay, what the fuck? How can we not pause things? The reason we're not pausing things is because when private banks are involved, right? They're making money. Our government wants to involve private industry in everything. And that is the problem because you're creating a middleman. The federal government can pause shit. It's a fucking law. It's paused. There's no middleman. There's no Wells Fargo to say, no more applications. I'm not putting out more than 10 billion.
Yeah,
there's no middleman. There's no middleman.
Yeah, the pause is the move. I agree with you 100%. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Johnny Fosco.
G.
Can the podcast be stopped?
The podcast
can't
be
stopped. Yeah, boy.
Trev. Oh, damn it. I forgot to talk about this on the goddamn
Hey, we got to do the
podcast.
Intro.
Okay, I'll talk about it in the intro.
Hey, we're still we still on broadcast. We're still live, right, Trey?
Yeah, you guys are.
All right, cool. All right. 3, 2, 1. On this episode, we talk about Dana White, how he's killing it out there with solutions for the UFC, but there's so many takeaways in business and some personal stories about John and I within the UFC and when it grew and when we were involved. And man, some random questions I really enjoyed some of John's answers about. I think you're going to learn a lot today.
Yeah. A lot of in-depth stuff here. But before I give my take on the show, I want to tell everyone listening what Trayvon Dier, our producer, told me yesterday. He said, I was talking to him. It was fantastic. It was a great conversation. He was wearing a wave cap. Okay. Look up a wave cap. And he said with a straight face to me that G tells me all the time he could really pull this off.
I agree a million
and I want every
1,000,000%. I'm a fucking confident motherfucker.
I want everyone to look up a wave cap.
Trey, you fucking bring me one of them motherfuckers. I got that
Corey,
shit.
like looking someone straight in the face and saying, I could pull that off if I wanted to. That is comedy, okay? But moving on.
That is called belief, John. That is called belief in yourself.
Yeah. This is a fucking great show. Let's go
to the show. Oh, that's amazing. All right, Trey.